Hello, this is Casey from the Local History and Genealogy Department here at the Covington branch, and this is our October edition of the Adventures in the Archives video series. And this month we are going to look a little bit more about the Linden Grove records collection. So for those that don't know, Linden Grove Cemetery is located on 13th Street in Covington, and some of the city's most prominent residents have been laid to rest here, including John G. Carlisle, William Wright Southgate, and Thomas Kennedy. And in addition to those people, there are many of Covington's prominent African American individuals are also buried here as well in Linden Grove. And some of those include B.F. Howard, who was the founder of the American Elks, the African American Elks rather. Dr. Adam Kelly, who was an early African American physician in Covington. I also just want to mention that prior to this video, our department coordinator Elaine Kuhn did a video last year out at Linden Grove called Stories from the Stones, where she goes over some of these individuals and some lesser known people in Covington and gives some of the genealogy background on them as well. And that video is up on the library's YouTube page if you want to check that out too anytime. So a little bit more background about Linden Grove. In 1835, the Western Baptist Theological Institute purchased approximately 150 acres of land south of Covington for the construction of a major theological seminary. A college building and several houses were constructed on this property, and over time a portion of that property became Linden Grove Cemetery. And throughout the years, as Covington grew, it really kind of grew up around the cemetery itself. Today the property is bordered by Holman and Linden Avenues and Kavanaugh and 13th Streets. In the spring of 1998, an independent Linden Grove Cemetery Board of Overseers was expanded to include 3 individuals chosen by the Kenton County Fiscal Court, 3 were chosen by the City of Covington, and 3 people chosen to serve at large. So a lot of the collection here is digitized and placed on Genki, which is our print materials database, as most people probably already know at this point. So names of the deceased, names of parents, and names of lot owners are indexed when available, so that's searchable on Genki. An interment book that spans the years of 1858 and 1864 is also included on Genki, and we have a print copy of that as well in our non-circulating section of the department. The collection of stats and burial permits in our archival collection, as you can see here, spans from about 1867 to 1958, and lot cards go from around 1922 to 1935. And then 1935 to 1998. So it covers many, many years. And just to go a little more in depth about what you can find in the collection, the box I have right here is a collection of lot cards. And the lot cards are a little bit, they differ a little bit more from the burial cards, as you'll see later. Most cemeteries keep lot cards, and most of the sections and plots within the cemetery keep these. And typically lot cards are going to have more information about individuals buried there in a particular plot. So large plots, especially for families that have a little bit of money, were purchased so the entire family could be buried together. So you might find relatives living in this plot you didn't even know about. So lot cards are really a good resource if you're trying to find individuals in your family line that you haven't been able to find information on before. So to get a little bit started, since it's October, it's spooky season, I wanted to start off talking about the burial cards and what you can find information-wise on them, with a story about a man buried in Linden Grove that is said to greet visitors as they enter the cemetery. And I was doing research on maybe, ghost stories, things of that nature. This book, Cincinnati Cemeteries, Hauntings and Other Legends by Roy Heiser. This is in our circulating collection. Right now we have a lot of books on display featuring supernatural ghost stories in this area. They always circulate really well, so if you're looking for a fun kind of Halloween read, this is a good place to start. So, just to start off, according to legend, a Covington man by the name of Charles Bennett was born on December 25th, 1878, and died March 10th of 1938, stands guard over Linden Grove to this day. From an article on the Kentucky Post on March 11th, 1938, Charles died from a fall on a flight of steps at his home at 1502 Russell Street when he was racing to reach the telephone in time to take a phone call. The paper states that he refused medical assistance at first, but later succumbed to head injuries. Some say that Charles was a security guard for over 30 years, and that he can still be seen keeping watch over the entrance gates to the cemetery. And people have said the sightings of Charles, if you see him, he'll often be wearing a navy blue suit with gold cufflinks, a bright red tie, and shiny black shoes. So, if you're ever out in Linden Grove, maybe you'll catch a glimpse of Charles here. So, basically, to start out, if you were trying to find a cemetery where your ancestor was buried, not exactly Linden Grove, but any cemetery, firstly, death certificates can include the name of the cemetery. That's a good place to start if you're trying to find the name. Obits, of course, can mention cemeteries, and death notices as well. Even ones that go back into the 1800s, you could get lucky and find a death notice that mentions the cemetery name. And lastly, findagrave.com. That's a resource that we use in the department a lot. Even at volunteer run, there's a lot of really good information that people put on there. I will say, not necessarily finding a cemetery, but if you watch our videos, our Wilmington Baptist Cemetery church tour, I was having some issues trying to find where one of the graves was actually located in the cemetery, and when I looked on Find a Grave, I could kind of pinpoint where it was located. So if you're trying to find the name of a cemetery, even a grave, that's also a really good resource to check out. For unmarked graves, definitely try to contact the office of the cemetery and ask for a map of burials. That's a good place to start if you're trying to find the plot or a lot. So to move on, I want to talk a little bit about the information that you can find on Linden Grove, the burial statistics here. So I pulled up Charles Bennett's actual card here showing all the information about his burial. So if you have a relative here buried in Linden Grove, you're going to be able to find a lot of information about that person just based on this card alone. So as you can see, place of death, Cannon County was the county that he died at. City, Covington, his full name, age of when he died, what he was white, what race was buried there. Again, a lot of African Americans are buried here in Linden Grove as well. The cause of death, concussion of brain of an accident. So if you're trying to find how a relative maybe passed away, you can't find a death certificate. If you can find it on the burial card, it might tell you as well. The undertaker is also located on the Linden Grove cards. Allison and Rose was his undertaker, and then, let's see, date and then registrar's name as well is included. So as you can see, there's already tons of information that's available in this collection. If you have a relative buried in Linden Grove and you don't know much about them, if you have their name, you can probably find even more on their burial card here. I can also show you, this is also his statistics card from Linden Grove. Usually there's two here, like the smaller vital stats and then the statistic card included in Linden Grove Cemetery records. And again, this gives a little bit more information about Charles, his late residence, date of birth, parents' names. That's always really good to find on these cards as well if you don't have a parent name. Let's see, they even have size of the coffin casket or box, which I thought was kind of interesting. Let's see, and then place of death as well, St. Elizabeth Hospital. So again, Linden Grove Cemetery records have tons of information if you have an ancestor buried there, but don't really have a good starting point to find more information on them. And kind of just to illustrate this point, just using Charles Bennett's records, I was able to go into Ancestry and some of our other records and find more information about him. I found that he based on his address. He was listed in the 1938 Covington City Directory at that address of 1502 Russell Street, but he was listed as a laborer and not as a security guard as some of the legends say. So again, maybe people were taking a little bit of liberty for the story to make him a security guard and not a laborer as he is found in the city directory. I found his wife, Ethel, who is listed as his widow on the cemetery record as well. I found that she was buried with him in Linden Grove too, and she died about a year later after Charles. And again, I found a little bit more based on his record. I wanted to find out a little bit about his family. I found that his father was Patrick Bennett, and I was able to look up a little bit more information on him, where he was found on census records and things like that. So just alone, I found more information just based on his cemetery records. So I just want to kind of illustrate the point that you can really use these as jumping off to find more information about your ancestors. So again, that is basically the gist of our Linden Grove Cemetery records. Lots of information to be found. Again, you can find a lot of the records digitized on GenKey under Linden Grove Cemetery records. And you're also free to come to the department itself and pull material from the collection here too. So again, this has been Casey with the Local History and Genealogy Department, and have a great October.